Welcome guys to the final recap of the Sevilla Open 2026. As you can see, I'm already in a different location. I'm back in my home country, Portugal, and I haven't been able to post or even record the last couple recaps because usually in over-the-board chess tournaments, the last round is in the morning, um, and like just for you to get the picture, the penultimate round was at 5:30 in the afternoon, and usually, at least my chess games last around 3 to 4 hours, um, and so we usually leave the playing hall by like 9:30, and we've only eaten dinner by like 11 p.m. and yeah, usually we only fell asleep around 1 or 2 a.m. So having around like the last round be in the morning at 9:30 is quite harsh, but that's usually how it goes in chess tournaments. It's kind of an inside joke that like no one likes the morning rounds and the last rounds. But so that's the reason I haven't been able to upload the last couple of days. So I decided we'd go over the last two games, and then I'd give you an overall a recap of the tournament, what I think went wrong, what I think went where I think I went in the right direction, and hopefully what I can do to improve in the future. So the penultimate round was against an English player named Riz Cummings, rated 2289. He's lived in Portugal for a while now, and yeah, I've talked to him a couple times, and he's a great guy. So we know each other for a while by now. So he usually plays like very principled main lines, and this was no different. I went for the Taimanov again, which is a system that I employed mostly throughout this tournament, or actually like both the times my opponent went e4 against me. So this is the beginning of the Taimanov variation, and he went for this very aggressive system with g4, which is not such a new idea anymore. It's been played quite a lot, even in the elite level. But yeah, there's a couple different ideas black can go for. The main line goes something like this: b5, knight takes c6. By the way, just like as a tip, um, in these Taimanov slash Khan Sicilians, basically when black plays with e6 and excuse me, really delays playing the move d6, black is often going for b5, and when they do it, it's usually a sign that white could or should take on c6. And the thing is that taking with a pawn often leads to sort of a passive structure. Um, White can undermine this queen side later with a4, and overall just has a development advantage. This is still possible for black, but usually white's happy to go into that structure. And taking with the queen is the main line. That's usually what black wants to do, but now white has this interesting concrete idea in mind, which I forget who um, introduced it, um, but it might have been Niels Garandelius, I'm not sure. And yeah, white goes for this pawn sacrifice, and the idea is just to get very quick development. So now he's threatening to win a rook. Black goes queen c4, knight f4, or knight g3, and so on. Black gets a pawn and is fighting for dear life to uh, safeguard his king. So instead I went for this line with knight takes d4, takes, b5, and now there's no more of those shenanigans with the pawn sacrifice, but the positions are still incredibly difficult to handle. Uh, Thankfully, not only for black. I mean, I have to be honest, like what black is doing makes absolutely no sense from a sort of a strategical standpoint because he's just developing the pieces on the queen side. It's not really clear why, because I can tell you he's never castling long. And yeah, bishop g2, rook c8. Black's going for some sort of hack attack, but the thing is he's often even playing d5 under good conditions, like knight f6 and then kick this knight away with b4 and then going d5. So he's even willing to open up the center, even though it seems that only white could benefit from that. But that's just chess theory for you. Sometimes things just don't make that much sense and you just have to know it. Or sometimes they don't make sense on the surface, so you have to go deeper and deeper for it to make, in order for it to make sense. If you want to read more about that, like I have a blog on Chess, and my latest blog post was actually about that, like what makes some chess openings so irrational and other openings, like say like an Italian game or something, so more like logical. Anyways, this move bishop g2 doesn't really exist, and it doesn't make much sense because now after rook c8 I'm threatening b4, and then if he moves the knight I would have a mate there on c2, so he protects it. I go knight f6, gaining a tempo on these pawns. So there are some ideas, for example, for white to often do something like this, where he just tries to distract this queen, and the queen doesn't really have many squares. For example, if queen c6, probably e5 is very dangerous for black. Also moves like h3 were there. But just to illustrate my point, the queen is tied down to the defense of this pawn on d7, right? And if you go really passive, this is completely against the spirit of this opening. And again, this knight will find itself most likely trapped with something like h3. Now, yeah, here I was planning to go d6. This is not really a pawn sacrifice because if he takes everything on d6, at the end he's actually losing an exchange here with knight f2. And I think that, yeah, this is what I saw during the game. So anyways, my plan next was to go knight e5, knight c4. So g5 wasn't played. You know, these positions are incredibly complicated. You always have to calculate some random stuff like e5. You know, anything with piece tension will just force you to, require you to calculate it. So he went f3. Now you can see that this move bishop g2 didn't really make much sense, but he was still playing it like rather confidently and sort of not blitzing it out, but we actually talked after the game and he thought, like he mixed up some lines and he thought he was still in preparation. So that's why he was playing the moves sort of seemingly so with such confidence. But it didn't really make sense to me during the game because why would you put the bishop on g2 and then close it with f3? Anyways, this was a critical moment in the game because I spent a long time here and I think it was a time well spent for the most part. So the first thing is that in the spirit of these Taimanov type openings, black is usually refraining from going d6 but rather going d5. So this was the first thing I was calculating. Now, white can take or he can push e5 or also like g5. But just to give you, you know, not to go through every single possible variation, this was one thing that I wasn't so thrilled about because again I was playing a bit below my rating and I really wanted to win. This was the penultimate round and I really wanted to get a win on the scoreboard going into the last round so that I would also get paired with a stronger opponent. And you know, something like this just felt a little bit too dry for my taste. I think that black is absolutely fine. Probably even has some chances against white's sort of. I mean, I guess these pawns are a bit overextended, but yeah, this shouldn't really be anything. This should just sort of peter out to a draw. So this was one line I didn't like. Then there was this similar one that goes with how was it? Is it b4 first? No, I think it was d5. Yeah, and now g5 for white. Yeah, because I think that if he takes with a pawn, I have this intermediate move b4, which was quite strong. Yeah, and then I'm taking there with the knight. Yeah. So instead, this move g5 started to bother me. I do have this intermediate move with b4. He moves the knight. I move my knight. And then we just get a similar position to what I've just seen. Trades, knight c5. I guess he trades everything. It's not really forced. Um, like something like this. And again, it's pretty similar. I don't think black has many chances to win this game. I could be wrong about that though. I'll have to investigate. So I thought about all that and decided to go for d6, which I didn't think was the best move objectively, but it kept more chances on the board. So he goes for g5 f4, which was expected. And now my point was to maneuver this knight around to c5, where he will have to take it, which is what he did. So ideally white doesn't want to give up his bishop pair, but the problem is that he's running into concrete issues here. So the pawn on e4 is just falling. It's not that easy to protect. And for the time being, there's no active way to, sacrifice something or get some breakthrough going. And if knight g3, there's this problem with b3, taking advantage of this king still being on c1. If he takes with this pawn, he can pretty much resign. He's losing the queen. If he takes with this pawn, it's actually the same thing because it's pinned. And he doesn't have time to take on c5 anymore because I'm taking here on e2. Just kind of a cute little idea. And now there's no stopping the pawn from queening. So long story short, he took on c5, knight d4. I went a5, f5. I was considering some interesting lines here. For example, h4 I felt like was the most natural move because he goes for this sort of standard idea of going h5 and then g6, breaking open my structure, trying to get to this e6 pawn. And now I was thinking during the game, like I had this idea that I thought was interesting and that I thought was worth at least looking into, which is g6, h5, bishop g7. So I gain a tempo by attacking this knight, taking advantage that this queen on d2 is overloaded. So he has to move it, like knight b3. I go back, he goes h6, and I have to go back to f8. And the thing about this position is that in some ways, I don't know if this advancement of the pawn all the way to h6 was actually useful for him or not, because now the king side is sort of closed off, and I'll go bishop e7 and short castles, and I can even close it further with e5. And then his pawn structure becomes a bit loose, so this could actually work out for me, but it's very move by move, very concrete, and I would have to run it further. He's still tied on to this pawn, and I'm coming through with a4, so I don't know, this could be interesting. But it's kind of an absurd idea from black. So he goes f5 instead. I need to close out the center. Knight b3, queen b6, king b1. So at first I really overestimated my attack because I just thought I was coming through with a4 and then whatever, b3 or a3. But it's one of those cases where you get to the position and then you understand that, yeah, okay, wait, it's actually not that dangerous, and this pawn on b4 could be rather weak in the future. I went bishop e7. So an alternative that I also need to investigate further on my own is this d5 sacrifice, which is quite thematic in the Sicilians, typically in the Najdorf, but okay, this was a different variation, but it's the same motif. And I wasn't sure during the game that I had enough compensation here. I was quite worried that my pawns were becoming too weak. But as I was analyzing with a friend after the game, like we saw that, or rather he saw that b3 here was, a good move for black, which is quite thematical as well, thematic. So knight d3 doesn't really work out for him, and if he doesn't go for that, okay, I'll try to double the rooks on the c line or do something like this. And I think that, yeah, black's chances could be reasonable. So I thought that I had to go for bishop e7, which is what I did. And I pretty much overlooked the strength, or at least the dangers of this move f6, which he went for. So I need to take and take. So I thought, prior to going bishop e7, I thought that I at least had bishop f8 in my pocket and the position remains somewhat closed, but this just doesn't really work out for me, I don't think. Because he's coming through with knight d3, and he's hitting b4 and e5 actually. He's threatening to sack the knight and then crash through on d7. But I don't know, maybe this could still work for me with b3 coming. Could be. So I took, I should say I spent a long time here. The game wasn't transmitted like in the DGT board, so you can't actually see that the time frames, but I spent a long time here because now we get down to this forcing line where it looks like black is going to collapse after this bishop a8 knight d3. It looks like black is about to collapse because all my pawns are super loose, like b4, e5, and this rook is not really getting trapped anytime soon. Eventually, after again a long think, I found this counterplay idea with f5, which is quite neat, honestly. I'm very pleased that I found this, because otherwise I would have been in massive trouble. And you know, the thing is that once this bishop comes into life, like it hits c2 in conjunction with the rook, and this rook's coming to g8, and somehow, like, black's play seems so loose and wild, but it's not really simple for white at all. I think white has to be quite careful. For example, like knight e5, I'll throw in this intermediate move just to activate the rook first. He doesn't really have a useful square for the bishop, so he just goes somewhere. And now let's say, for example, bishop takes. And I think black could be better in this position, and I still have to make sure that there's like no problems with the king or whatever, but I think black should be better in this position, just going rook g2. And it's with this pawn as well, like I think white's position is really on the edge here. So instead he went bishop h3, which is a blunder. So he missed this, he missed something here, because I can take on e4, so I don't have to move my rook, because otherwise he puts his bishop on f5 and just completely blockades everything. But I take on e4, and this is really clutch, because if he takes on c8, I'm taking his rook. This was the game. And what I think he missed is that after rook e1, I have not f5, which seems good, but blunders rook takes e4, but rather bishop takes c2, which is simpler. And yeah, I'm just collecting too many pawns. He might have missed that. Instead, okay, he went bishop b7 to trade off my bishop pair. I traded, and now you get down to this endgame where black has excellent chances. I won't get too much into the details since like I'm also going to cover the last round and this video might get really long. So I went rook g8. I had other possibilities as well. And now he needs to give a check. I cannot move the king because the rook would be hanging. So bishop d8, he takes, rook g1. This is all forcing. I'm threatening to win a piece there and maybe checkmate him. So h4 is also forced, rook h1, and now he goes c4. So long story short, I was trying to get to a position as such where black is completely winning, because even if the pawns were, even if the pawn count were even, I think black would have great chances, but especially with this outside h-pawn, these pawns in conjunction with the bishop are just too strong. The bishop is too goated in these endgames because it can defend and attack from long range, and it's just far superior to the knight. So this is not really playable. He goes c4. I can still take on h4, but I thought this was clever, this bishop e5 idea. He needs to give a check. And my point is that I'm coming through with bishop d2 on the next move. And I wanted to induce or force him to go king c2. Like king c2, rook h4. And now he's again about to lose even more material because it's hard to defend this pawn. If king d3, I have this check. So instead I made a small or maybe big inaccuracy with king d7. At least it made my life significantly harder. Because after rook b5, I realized that I cannot go bishop d2 on plane of this fork or double attack, I guess, on d5. So I need to go back. Okay, he gives a check, king c2 takes, king c3. And the one tip I would give you in these scenarios where black is where you are completely winning, of course we were reaching time trouble, time pressure here, about like at least less than 10 minutes for each side. The one tip I would give you is you just need to think like 10% of the time about what you want to do, and like 90% of the time about like restraining the opponent's counterplay. Because it's really easy to play with the black pieces. I just need to push any pawn just further down the line. The one thing you just need to pay attention to is your opponent's counterplay. So I give this check, f5, rook b6, king d7. Again, watching out for his stuff. b4, I take, because I don't want to give him these two connected passed pawns. He took with the knight. I went e4. Yeah, I was starting to get quite concerned about this pawn with the knight and so on. The knight is really infamous for being able to trick all kinds of these positions under time pressure and just giving random checks and forks all over the place. But yeah, it's really just a matter of controlling it. So bishop e5, taking this square away from it. I expected this check. I wanted to go back. Again, restricting his rook. Knight d4 is not possible because of this check. And this is the final sort of practical mistake I would say I made, which is this f4. I should mention, like, everything is completely winning here for black, but again, you want to win as smoothly as possible. So rook d3 was just probably a much better move. And I don't know what kind of ghost I saw here, but I went for f4. But now he's coming with some stuff with like c6, knight b5, and I have to be somewhat careful. So I calculated out this line with rook d3, and okay, it's not that hard to calculate, so I went for it. But usually I don't advise anyone, not even myself, like no one, to go for tactics in time pressure. Okay, he goes for this a4 check, trying to divert my king. I don't really need to take it. And we get down to this endgame, which I thought was just completely lost for him. Even though it's just 2-on-1, like these two connected passers are too strong and they're too far up advanced in the board. So king c4, king b4, now he went rook f7. And the only remaining question was whether f3 is winning or not. Because otherwise I might have some issues, like being tied down to the defense of the pawns. But it is winning. So the only scenario where this is not winning is if black's rook is somewhere like on d8 or whatever, and white has his king on e3. And even then it could be tricky with the pawns already so far up advanced. But with this formation, without the king being like in the middle of the pawns like that, it is just easily winning. So he keeps giving checks. I go king e5. He cannot really trade because the pawn would just queen. And once the checks were out, I go for this check, this one. Again, evicting the king of out of this important square on e3. And now all I gotta do is just f2, e3, rook e1, make another queen. So he finally resigned. So yeah, it was a tough game, which is what you can expect from from playing strong opposition. So now let me bring up the... Okay, we're back. The computer started lagging like crazy, I'm not sure why. But let me show you the last game. So I went for e4, I went for g6. Again, a bit of a dubious sort of troll opening. Okay, it was the last round. I wasn't sure whether he prepared or not. I mean, I guess not, because, I don't know. This system is not too great, but... I went for this principled line with bishop e2, which is what Anish Giri recommends on his e4 course. a6, a4. It's important to prevent these ideas with black of going b5. Knight c6, a5. This is still in his course, and now he went for this move bishop g4. Here I was on my own, but the way forward is quite logical as well. So I grab space, he needs to take on f3. He needs to do this, and now he went for c6. And the only unfortunate thing about my position is that I cannot take immediately, which would be ideal, just to play a position as such. It's sort of a Sicilian, right, structure, where I just have the bishop pair. If I were in time to play bishop e3 to b6, I'd be doing great. But unfortunately, there's no way for me to defend this pawn. So I have to open up my king a little bit, or a lot, by going f4, which is not really desirable, but I still have the bishop pair, right? So this kind of position I thought was still very much advantageous for white. So queen c7, bishop d3. Now once you have a static advantage, in this case it's just the bishop pair and also this weakness on a6, that's as we say fixed forever. You just want to consolidate the position. So because my king is kind of open and I have some weaknesses, I just want to defend everything nice and steadily, and then eventually start to create threats. So queen e2. He goes for c5. I expected this. I don't know if I can take on e6. Probably not, because he goes c4. And now this bishop is like stranded out of the game. And if bishop b5, there might be some tactics with knight e4 stuff coming in. Again, I have a static advantage. I just want to keep everything as nice and tidy as possible. So I go for this move b3, which does loosen the knight. I mean, even though you want to be as sort of safe as possible, you always have to make some concessions. So the point of this move is that I'm trying to play bishop c4 next, and then maybe knight d5. Queen c6, rook d1. I'm always keeping an eye out for tactics related to this knight, but there's nothing, because if he moves his knight, there's always knight d5 coming in. So he strips me of that option, and now I go for bishop c4. Again, preventing his counterplay with d5. So you can see that all of my play has been based around preventing his counterplay, because in the long run, if he runs out of moves, let's say, or constructed, ideas, white will just be better. Now, an interesting line was knight takes e4 here. We both spent a long time considering this, and now this move, rook takes c4. So the line keeps going. Pawn takes, bishop d4, rook takes d7. This is just one of the lines, by the way. It's not all forced, but I think we both reached some position as such in our calculation. And the thing is that black got a pawn for the exchange, and he also got to completely cripple white's structure. However, he's facing some concrete issues, because this pawn on e6 is really weak, and like imagine when we get down to an endgame, black would find it really hard to activate his rook, because he would leave this pawn hanging, and then this one just makes a new queen. And also, inclusively, there's some problems along the 7th rank with, for example, rook a3 here, and then rook f3. So, again, we both spent a long time calculating this, but I think I sort of was correct there, in that he shouldn't go for it. So he didn't. I went queen f3, knight e8. So he officially runs out of immediate threats, let's say, which is great for me, great news. But around this time, okay, he comes around, he wants d5 maybe, or knight b5. Around this time, I was spending too much time Also a problem that I have mentioned in earlier videos that I think that I improved upon it even during the tournament, but even so, like it could be improved further. I was just too scared of his counterplay in general, and it's not that I shouldn't be paying attention to it, but I should be making my decisions quicker, I think. For example, it took me some 7 minutes to play this queen f3. Again, these small time usage mismanagements add up. Knight e2, knight c7. Now I have this decision to make to go for what I did in the game, trading off these bishops or keeping the bishop pair, which is in principle a better thing to do. The two bishops work really well in general, like better than just having one bishop. But I wasn't too sure, I gotta be honest, I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do with my position. He's got some weaknesses on d6, on a6, but unfortunately there's this counterplay coming again with knight f6 and d5, which is not that easy to stop. There's probably like precise ways to do this in which I can stop this counterplay, but you know, I also wanted to get this rook into the game someday, so I just traded off this bishop. Knight b5. Again, I spent a little bit too long here pondering over knight takes, bishop takes, all of the different outcomes, but long story short, he fixes his structure and he should be fine because this pawn isn't enough of an asset to really pose that many problems to him. So I go knight e2. I'm interested in keeping pieces on the board. This knight is not a good piece anyways. I bring this rook back into the game. He does the same thing. But even still, it's not that trivial to see what white is going to do. So he again threatens d5. I stop it. He goes back and sort of what do they call it? Like a quiet draw offer, I think, which is when your opponent starts like to repeat moves. But I was far from interested in a draw. This was the last game of the tournament. I really wanted to win, and I'm not sure I even mentioned that I was playing an opponent rated 23-16. I might have not mentioned that at all. From Italy. So anyways, I wanted to win, so I wanted to keep the game going, so I took on b5. Also, I'm not sure what piece I should take with. Like, on the surface, the bishop doesn't look like that great a piece, but it will help in preventing his d5 push. And in the long run, I might have chances on the king side, or maybe e5 and then c4 in some scenarios. So maybe keeping the bishop was actually more interesting than I thought. I kept the knight. I went for this move queen d3. I believe this was a moment where the engine was suggesting I should go f5, which is a thematic idea, but it's quite hard to understand when it's good and when it's bad, because what happens is that you're giving away this square in e5 for the knight, which is a beautiful square. You're giving it up completely. What I would get in return is some attacking chances, either by pushing this pawn to f6, which could and should be really strong here, or sometimes taking on e6 and just softening up his structure. So I went queen d3, b4, knight e2, knight f6, knight g3. And he quickly went for this move h5. I should mention he was playing super fast. I think he was just trying to flag me pretty much. At this point he had like 29 minutes and I had maybe 11 or 10. And if you've ever played classical chess over the board, you know that once that like 10-minute mark sets in, you really start to feel the heat and the pressure. But I think that I managed to come up with something rather interesting. I mean, you know, in lower levels of chess, once they attack some piece of yours, you usually just defend it or move it away. In the higher levels, you start to look more and more for counter threats. So the way to prevent your opponent's or to defend against your opponent's threats is to create an even bigger threat. And so I came up with this idea to go f5. Again, I didn't have much time to calculate it, but I just went a bit more based on intuition. He goes f4, h4, which he might have to do, sort of, because if he tries to just close it off, I thought the queen was coming around to g5, and this looks rather dangerous. Say h4, queen g5, something like king, or let's say I include takes first. Queen e3, h4, queen g5, king g7, just to point out this move, and knight f5, and all of a sudden I'm winning. So he can't really fend off my attack that easily. He goes h4. My point is not to move the knight away. I'm sacking the piece to open up his king side, and he bites the bullet, which again he probably had to do because if he takes here, I'm going e5, and now this is a nightmare for him. So he takes, and now I had some options, right? Really hard to figure this stuff out in, I don't know, 6 minutes or 7 or whatever that I had left. But this is one of those calculation-based positions where you're feeling, I mean, it can help you to a certain extent, but mostly you just have to calculate it move by move. So I can take, of course, I can go rook f1, I can go queen f3, I can go queen takes g3, and it's hard to figure it out. So I decided to get another piece involved. The computer says this is a mistake. What I missed about this variation that he wants to do with queen f3 is that after queen e4, he has to give the piece back, by the way, because I'm doubling up on the f file, and he doesn't have much else to do. He cannot take here, obviously, because there's this mate. So queen e4, queen takes f6, queen takes g6, and I thought my attack was just dying out. I thought the flame was just like extinguishing. But the computer points out this move, queen e7, which keeps the game interesting, honestly. He can take here whenever he pleases. I'm usually not taking back, I'm just moving the king away. And the thing about this is that I still have this little trump card, right, this a pawn, which I'm pushing, and this d6 pawn is falling, and this king side is open, so the computer gives some chances for white, like, I don't think it ends in an immediate draw. I go rook f1, which is a mistake, but not because of what he played, which is obviously very natural, but rather because of knight e4, which I thought was pretty much not possible, but it is. It turns out that it is, because after I take king f8, queen e3, turns out that the knight controls very important squares like g5, f6, and it's hard to attack the black king, actually. And the computer gives a large advantage to black. I don't think that it was like completely winning, like lights out, but still a large advantage. Okay, instead he goes for this, which unfortunately forces the exchange of the queens. And the reality is that I don't have much to work with. I just have this a pawn, which he quickly got to taking. And yeah, we just traded everything and made a draw. So a bit unfortunate. I really wanted to win this last game. I tried my absolute hardest, but my opponent also defended well. And yeah, the time management was somewhat of an issue towards the end, but it wasn't the decisive factor, I would say. This wasn't a bad game, I don't think, by any side. But it's definitely a very interesting and complex middle game, which I'll just have to analyze. Now, in terms of a sort of comprehensive view of the tournament, I ended up gaining 1 elo point, which is basically breaking even. It's not good, not ideal. I'm traveling and sort of studying and whatnot, and I'm trying to improve. Obviously, I don't want to just stay still. But there's always the learning aspect of the tournament. So for the majority of the games, I feel like I played well. I would give my overall performance sort of a 7 out of 10 in terms of the potential that I think I can reach in terms of um, sort of the return on investment, the investment being the, the coaching and the studying and whatnot. I would give it a 7 out of 10. So what I think could have went better, yeah, one thing is the time management in a lot of the earlier games. Something that I noticed about myself is that when I'm playing faster and I'm just making the decisions a bit faster or much faster, I gain confidence by that, and it goes in sort of a spiral, right? You gain more confidence, which makes you play faster, and that gives me even more confidence. So I find that when I'm taking like 20 minutes to make a decision, usually it's not going to like make the whole difference in the game. And then I spend another 10 trying to figure out if I should keep the bishop pair or not, and then maybe 7 more minutes. And there's moves that I just make in 2 to 3 minutes, sort of just do sort of a blunder-proof check, see if everything is in place, see if I'm not hanging anything, if I'm not blundering anything, and just go for the move, right? Instead of always sort of second downing myself and whatnot. I would say that my mental state in this tournament was okay, not great. I felt a lack of clarity in a lot of the games, um, and this like negatively impacted my performance. But again, I think it was okay. It wasn't, I wasn't too nervous or anything. Um, I lost 2 games. So one game was against the winner of the tournament, actually, I should say, which was Liam Putnam, with 8 out of 9, which is an impressive score, and he made a GM norm. But my game against him, pretty much, at least the 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 deciding part of the game came down to just one move, right? A one move blunder. Those things happen, but um, that was unfortunate. Um, and and the second game I lost was against a low-rated opponent, and that was much more complex and instructive in terms of my growth in chess. Right, that wasn't a one-move blunder or anything. There were many blunders, but it wasn't that. I don't place it in the same kind of blocks, right? Like a one-move blunder that okay, I just have to do more tactics and I'll get better at it. No, that was more to do with decision making. Again, the time management there was really crucial because I spent so much time on moves that I shouldn't have, and then I didn't have time for the critical moments. Um, Also, keeping my nerves still in time pressure. Of course, that's a hard thing to do in general, but there was this moment where he sacked a piece, and I could literally just take it with the king, and I just had a blind spot on that, and I instead moved my king to the side. That was just a crazy, crazy blunder. That just has to do with nerves. Um, but that game had many moments that were more about decision making than anything else. But yeah, apart from those, I feel like I played well throughout the tournament, and I should probably, in terms of going forward, what I will do is probably switch up my training routine a bit. Maybe read more uh, books about different things. Like mainly, I've been doing calculation and openings. I feel like both of those things were decent in the tournament. There were some highlights in terms of calculation. I feel um, could also be improved, of course. Um, but yeah, I should switch it up a bit and maybe include some more books or courses or whatever about sort of broadening my understanding of the game, which I feel like, yeah, my understanding and the decision making, right? I feel like that was the most important takeaway from this tournament. But yeah, I'm a bit disappointed because I feel like uh, even so, like with the knowledge and sort of the play that I displayed in this tournament, it could have went better, and I could have gained a bit more rating points if I had not lost to that lower rated player. If I had won that game, I could have even won like 1K or something. The K being like the coefficient factor in the rating formula. So if you have K10, you can win at most 10 points and lose at most 10 points. If you have K20, you can lose at most 20, win at most 20 in one game. That is not in the tournament. But yeah, those are my main takeaways from the tournament. And yeah, I recorded some videos like of the tournament hall and whatnot, and some parks that we visited. And overall, the city was nice. I mean, we were quite far away from the center, which was not really cool. I mean, we actually, it's so sad, but the tournament just had one round per day, and even so, we weren't able to visit the city, like the proper city, because we were in sort of in the outskirts. We weren't able to visit the center, not even one day, which is kind of sad, but like we really didn't have that much time. You always have to prepare for the games and whatnot. But it was a pleasant tournament. I liked being there. I liked the sort of the ambience. Tournaments in Spain are usually just a bit more relaxed, which I find sort of pleasurous. And yeah, my next tournament might be the Graz Chess Festival in February. I have to look into it, see like what conditions there are, and if basically how much money I'm going to spend. But yeah, I might play that. And yeah, I have some other ideas for videos that are coming up. So I'll see you guys soon with those. And that's all for this tournament. Hope you enjoyed my recaps, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.